Hello and welcome everybody to a new video from Jörg, Juggler66, Hour of the Truth. This is today on the 9th of March 2018 in the evening of Friday, so Sabbath has started already over here, the 28th reading of The Secret History of the Jesuits from Edmond Paris, a book that I've really come to love. I knew it would be interesting to read this book in the beginning, and I'm even more convinced that it was a good decision to read this book to you in two languages, because, okay, this is the English recording. I also did the German one. I learned a lot of this, and in German I started another book from Theodor Griesinger, which it's about the Jesuits, and that is published in 1866. And that book is just so fantastic, and I got the English version also, that I think I have to put that on my to-read list for in the future too. Very interesting stuff that we can learn there. And before I go into that, of course, I'm gonna finish this reading of The Secret History of the Jesuits first. So without any further ado, let us go in part 28 back to the Jesuits and the Colleqium Russicum, which we started last time, and here we still are dealing with the infernal cycle, which is the last part of the book called, and I will start here on the bottom of page 178, just retreating for a few sentences for continuity purposes, and we will start here at the highlighted "we will." We will remind our readers that the Virgin of Fatima had herself promised the conversion of the Russians if all Christians sincerely and joyfully practiced all the commandments of the evangelical law. You remember that I told you last time that it is absolutely important that you read the book Queen of Islam, Queen of Rome, Queen of All, which I probably will do in the future too on this channel, but you are of course free to get that book, download that for free on the internet and read it for yourself, because I think it is very important that you always do your own studies. We want to put out, the author continues, that according to Jesuit fathers who are great specialists in miraculous matters, the celestial mediator recommended as especially effective the daily use of the rosary. Celestial mediator, if anybody thinks of that of Jesus Christ of the Bible, no, because he never recommended as especially effective the daily use of the rosary. So we are speaking here about, of course, of another celestial mediator, not of Jesus Christ. This promise from the Virgin had even been sealed by a, quote, dance of the sun, unquote, a wonder which occurred again in 1951 in the gardens of the Vatican for the benefit of His Holiness Antichrist Pope Pius only. So that was a personal performance the sun gave only for the, quote-unquote, Holy Pope. Nevertheless, the Russians entered Berlin, in spite of the crusade called for by the Pope, and until now the fellow countrymen of Mr. Khrushchev have not shown any eagerness, as far as we know, to appear before the doors of St. Peter in penitent garb with the halters around their necks. What went wrong? Had Christians not told sufficient heads on their rosaries? Were heaven's requisite number of tens not fulfilled? We would be tempted to believe this to be the cause if there wasn't that rather scabrous detail in the wonderful story of Fatima. The promise of Russia's conversion, sensibly given to the clairvoyant Lucia in 1917, was quote-unquote revealed by her in 1941 only, when she had become a nun, and made public in October 1942 by Cardinal Schuster, a keen partisan of the Rome-Berlin axis. It was made public by request, or shall we say order, from Antichrist Pope Pius XII, the same Pius XII who, 3 months later, expressed the aforementioned call for a crusade. Very quote-unquote enlightening indeed. One of Fatima's apologists admits that, because of it, the matter, quote, evidently loses some of its prophetic value, unquote. This is the least one could say about it. A certain canon, great specialist in the matter of the Portuguese miracle, tells us in confidence, quote, I must confess that as far as I am concerned, it is only with great reluctance that I added to my first editions the text revealed to the public by His Eminence Cardinal Schuster, unquote. We certainly understand the good canon's feelings. So the Holy Virgin told the shepherdess Lucia in 1917, if my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted, while charging her to keep this secret to herself. How then could the Christians have come to know these requests and meet them? Credibile quia ineptum. It seems that from 1917 until 1942, unfortunate Russia did not need to have prayers offered on her behalf, and that they were urgently needed only after the Nazi defeat at Moscow, and when von Paulus was trapped in Stalingrad. At least it is the only conclusion this late revelation allows. The supernatural, as we have said already, is a powerful thing, but it must be handled with some care. The Bible says, prove every spirit that it is of the truth, if it is of the truth. Yeah? This spirit, that quote-unquote Holy Virgin, that speaks to the shepherdess Lucia in 1917, saying, if my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted, is not a spirit of the Bible in the positive sense. Okay? That's the one they warned us about. Now, after Montoire, the Jesuits' General Halke von Ledokowski already spoke heartily about the general meeting the company would hold in Rome after England had capitulated, the importance and brilliance of which would not find an equal in all its history. But heaven had decided otherwise. In spite of Saint Teresa and the Lady of Fatima, Great Britain braced herself against the enemy. The United States entered the war, even though the Jesuit Father Coughlin had worked so hard. The Allies disembarked in North Africa, and the Russian campaign was a disaster for the Nazis. For Ledokowski it was the collapse of his great dream. Wehrmacht, SS, cleaner-ups, and Jesuit converters were retreating together. The general's health did not stand up to such a disaster, and he died. Now, let us see though, what this Russicum is, which Antichrist Pius XI and von Ledokowski added in 1929 to the already so rich and varied Roman organization. With the Apostolic Constitution Quam Curam, Pius XI created this Russian seminary in Rome, where young apostles of every nationality would be trained, on condition that they adopt, before anything else, the Byzantine Slav rite, and that their minds made up to devote themselves entirely to the task of bringing Russia back into Christ's fold. Of course, with Christ's fold, we are speaking here of the fold of the Roman Catholic Church, ending the schism of 1054, when the Eastern Orthodox Church split from the Western Roman Catholic Church, both being Catholics. So always keep in your mind when we are speaking about this Russian Church that we are still speaking about Catholics. Yeah? Just not ultramontane Catholics, just not Catholics who accept the absolute sovereign power of the Pope, but we are speaking about Catholics. This is the aim of the Russian Pontifical College, alias Russicum, the Oriental Pontifical Institute, and the Roman College. These 3 centers are also administered by the Company of Jesus. Of course, you say. Well, at the Roman College 54 Piazza del Gesù, we find the Jesuits' noviceship, and amongst the novices some bear the name of Russipedes, as they are destined to Pitere Russiam, or to go to Russia. Orthodox believers should watch out, for so many valorous champions are determined to crush them. We must point out, though, that the aforementioned Homme Nouveau affirms, Homme Nouveau is French for new man, quote, all these priests are certainly destined to go to Russia, but this project cannot be realized for the time being, unquote. According to this particular publication, the Soviet press calls these apostles the Vatican's parachutists, and from the testimony of some well-informed on the subject, we come to the conclusion that this name fits them quite well. The person in question is no less than the Jesuit Alighiero Tondi, professor at the Gregorian Pontifical University, who repudiated Ignatius of Loyola the spiritual exercises, though not without a considerable row, and resigned from the famous company together with its pomp and deeds. We can read the following amongst other declarations in an interview he gave to an Italian newspaper. Quote, the activities of the Colleqium Russicum and other organizations linked to it are many and varied. For example, together with Italian fascists and what remains of German Nazism, the Jesuits organize and coordinate the various anti-Russian groups on the ecclesiastical authorities' order. The ultimate aim is to be ready, eventually, to overthrow the governments of the East. Finances are provided by the ruling ecclesiastical organizations. This is the work the leaders of the clergy apply themselves to. These same ones would readily tear their cassock apart out of grief when they are accused of meddling in politics and urging the bishops and priests of the East to conspire against their governments. When talking to the Jesuit Andrei Urusov, I said that it was disgraceful to affirm in the Osservatore Romano, the Vatican's official voice, and in other ecclesiastical publications, that the unmasked spies were martyrs of the faith. Urusov burst out laughing. What would you write, Father? He asked me. Would you call them spies, or something worse? Today, the Vatican's politics need martyrs, but at the moment martyrs are difficult to find, so they are fabricated. When we understand this sentence, when we understand this sentence well enough, and we transport it into the time that we live in today, 2018, what can we make out of this? The Vatican's politics need martyrs. But martyrs are difficult to find, so they are fabricated. Have you ever thought of 9/11? Those Muslims who allegedly hijacked these planes and flew into the towers, allegedly, were martyrs, right? How many martyrs do we have in our world today when you think about all the different false flags? Fabricated. Think about it. But the author continues, this is a dishonest game. He shook his head ironically. You're ingenious, Father. Because of your work you should know better than anyone else that the Church's leaders have always been inspired by the same rules. And what about Jesus Christ? I asked. He laughed. One must not think of Jesus Christ, he said. If we thought of him, we would end up on the cross. And today, the time has come to put others on the cross and not to be hoisted on it ourselves. Unquote. So, As the Jesuit Urusov said it so well, the Vatican's politics need martyrs, volunteers or not. It created millions of them during 2 world wars. Among them 6 million Jews, among them many others during these world wars and after these world wars. Whenever the Roman Catholic Church goes out to kill in the name of the Lord, but under a disguise of regime change and everything else, all they do is producing martyrs. Think about that. We've come to chapter 8. Pope John the 23rd removes the mask, still in the infernal cycle. Out of all the fictions generally accepted in this world, the spirit of peace and harmony attributed to the Holy See is probably the most difficult to root up, as this spirit seems inherent to the nature of the apostolic magister itself. In spite of the lessons of history not fully known or too quickly forgotten, the one who calls himself Christ's vicar must necessarily incarnate, in the eyes of many, the ideal of love and fraternity taught by the gospel. Does not logic as well as sentiment want it so to be? In reality, the events make us realize that this favorable presumption must be greatly abated, and we believe that it has been sufficiently demonstrated. But the Church is prudent, as we are often reminded, and it is seldom that her real actions are not surrounded by the indispensable precautions which will take care of appearances. Quote, and this is in French, Bonne renommée vaut mieux que ceinture dorée, which means in English, a good reputation is better than a golden belt. Says the proverb. But it is even better to possess both. The Vatican, immensely rich, guides itself by this maxim. Its political lust for domination always assumes spiritual and humanitarian pretexts proclaimed urbi and orbi by an intense propaganda which a gold-plated belt provides for, and the good reputation, thus preserved, maintains the inflow of gold to the said belt. The Vatican does not deviate from that line of conduct, and when the stand it takes in international affairs is clearly revealed through the attitude of its hierarchy, the legend of its absolute impartiality is kept alive by those solemn and ambiguous encyclical letters and other pontifical documents. Recently, the Hitlerian era multiplied such examples. But could it be otherwise of an authoritative power which is supposed to be transcendent and universal at the same time? The instances when that mask was seen to fall are very rare. For the world to be a witness of such a spectacle, a contingency is necessary which, to the Holy See's eyes, endangers its vital interests. Only then does it throw aside all ambiguity and openly places all the credit at its disposition on one of the scales. This is what happened in Rome on the 7th of January 1960 concerning the Summit Conference, which was to bring together heads of Eastern and Western governments in an attempt to settle the conditions of a truly peaceful coexistence between the defenders of two opposite ideologies. Of course, the Vatican's position for such a project did not leave us in any doubt. In the United States, Cardinal Spellman demonstrated it plainly by urging Catholics to show their hostility to Mr. Khrushchev when he was the guest of the American president. For this part, and without expressing it clearly, his quote-unquote holiness, John the 23rd had shown little enthusiasm for the détente in his Christmas message. Little typey here, but it's Christmas. The hope it expressed to see peace set up in the world, a wish which is a must in such a document, seemed very weak accompanied as it was with many calls to Western leaders to be prudent. But so far the Vatican put on a good face. What happened then within less than 2 weeks? Did another long-cherished hope to see the first one fail prove vain? Did the decision of Mr. Gronchi, President of the Italian Republic, to go to Moscow make the cup of Roman bitterness overflow? Now, whatever happened, the storm broke out suddenly on the 7th of January, and the ecclesiastical thunders burst with unprecedented fury upon the Christian statesmen guilty of wanting an end to the Cold War. On the 8th of January, Le Monde, the French newspaper, printed the following, quote, on the day the President of the Italian Republic was to leave to pay a minutely prepared official visit to Moscow's leaders, Cardinal Ottaviani, successor of Cardinal Pizarro, as Secretary of the Holy Office of Congregation, or Chief of the Church's Supreme Tribunal, delivered a most astonishing speech in the Basilica of Saint-Marie Majeur, during a morning propitiatory service for the Church of Silence. Now, who are we speaking about here? Cardinal Ottaviani, successor of Cardinal Pizarro, as Secretary of the Holy Office Congregation or Chief of the Church Supreme Tribunal. We are speaking about the leader of the Inquisition. Yeah? It is the Holy Office of the Congregation of the Faith, as it is called today. And this is the Church's Supreme Tribunal. Yeah? This is the Inquisition we are talking about here. Quite important to understand that. Quote, never before had a prince of the church, and that's what a cardinal is, holding one of the Vatican's most important posts, attacked the Soviet authorities so furiously, nor reprimanded so harshly the Western powers who dealt with them. Quote, Le Monde gave substantial excerpts of that violent speech which amply justified the qualitative of most astonishing it had used. Tamerlane's times are back, affirmed Cardinal Ottaviani, and the Russian leaders were described as quote-unquote new antichrists who, quote, condemn to deportation, imprison, massacre, and leave nothing but wasteland behind them, unquote. The orator was shocked that nobody anymore was, quote, scared to shake hands with them, unquote, and that, quote, on the contrary, a race was arranged to see who would be the first to do so and exchange smiles with them, unquote. Then he reminded his listeners that Pius XII withdrew to Castel Gandolfo when Hitler came to Rome, forgetting, though, to add that this same pontiff had concluded with the said Hitler a concordat most advantageous for the Church. Space travel was not spared either in that violent denunciation. Quote, the new man believes he can violate heaven by feats in space and so demonstrates once more that God does not exist, unquote. The Western politicians and statesmen who, according to the Cardinal, grew stupid with error, were severely hauled over the coals, as were all the quote-unquote Christians who, quote, do not react or leap with rage any more. Finally, this virulent and significant conclusion, quote, can we declare ourselves satisfied with any kind of détente when, in the first place, there cannot be any sort of calm within humanity unless we observe an elementary respect for conscience, our face, the face of Christ covered once more with spittle, crowned with thorns and struck? Could we hold out our hand to those who do this? Unquote. These dramatic words cannot make us forget that the Vatican can hardly speak of respect for consciences, as it shamelessly oppresses them in countries where it dominates, such as in Franco Spain, where the Protestants are persecuted. In fact, it is most impudent on the part of the Holy Office's Secretary especially to demand that others observe this elementary respect when the Roman Church rejects it entirely. That is what the Roman Catholic Church does. You know? It has a standpoint that it reflects on others, but of course that standpoint is in the Roman Catholic Church is quote-unquote hidden, and then they blame others for having that standpoint. I don't know if I make my point clear here, but to demand that others observe this elementary respect when the Roman Church rejects it entirely. How can you ask of someone to have respect for something that you don't even respect yourself, you know? But that they don't respect these things, of course, is more the hidden agenda and not out in the open. That's what the people don't understand. But this is absolutely Jesuitical casuistry in action. The encyclical letter, the author continues, Quanta Cura and the syllabus. We are speaking about Quanta Cura is from Pope Pius IX and the syllabus of errors is from Pope Pius IX of 1864. The encyclical letter Quanta Cura and the syllabus are explicit. Anathema on the one who says every man is free to embrace or profess the religion his judgment considers to be right. This little point I learned from Tom Frass from Inquisition Update, who you probably know very well from a lot of videos that I put up, and probably even from First Amendment Radio, however you know him, as long as you know Tom Frass and his ministry Inquisition Update. He told me that when he was watching EWTN years ago to avail himself to study Roman Catholicism, because when you want to know what the lie actually all is about, then you really have to study Roman Catholicism, and that's why he watched for years EWTN. And he said that there was a show that he saw, and don't quote me verbatim on this, but I think it was that he said that Raymond Arroyo had Cardinal Newman on, and that Cardinal Newman said that no man has the right to choose his own religion. That is the standpoint of the Roman Catholic Church. And as you can see, this is right taken out of the encyclical letter Quanta Curum and the syllabus of errors. Anathema on the one who says every man is free to embrace or profess the religion his judgment considers to be right. So that means I, Jörg, am anathema because God calls me to Him and to adhere to His written word, the Bible, and that I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Therefore, I am anathema because I, quote-unquote, embrace and profess the religion that in my judgment considers to be the right. That makes me anathema for the Roman Catholic Church. When I am anathema, that means everybody is free to kill me. Yeah? It's very important to understand this sentence. This is written in the syllabus in Article 15, the book says here. Anathema on the one who says every man is free to embrace or profess the religion his judgment considers to be right. I have to highlight this. Absolutely. This is absolutely a key sentence of what we are reading here today. Yeah? How about... Listen, I'm speaking most of the times to Americans, right? With these videos, at least I think. How about what we just read in the light of freedom of religion, religious liberty, religious freedom, however you want to call it, that was put into your constitution. Isn't that the absolutely opposite of that? On the one hand, you have freedom of religion, means that you have the choice to choose your God that you want to worship. There's only one God, but that's another case. So you are free to do that and to worship that God in the way that He commands you to do. That's freedom of religion in the United States of America, isn't it? When you're a Methodist and you want to worship the way that the Methodists want to worship, nobody is hindering you to do that. Or shouldn't hinder you, because you have freedom of religion. When you're a Seventh-day Adventist, you can worship the way the Seventh-day Adventists want you to tell you. When you're a Lutheran, you do it the Lutheran way. When you're a Muslim, you do it the Quran way. When you're a Buddhist, you do it the Padama way. Whatever you want to do. That is freedom of religion. Okay, when that is freedom of religion, then what do we read here? Why does it say in the syllabus, anathema on the one who says every man is free to embrace or profess the religion his judgment considers to be right? This is absolutely opposed to freedom of religion. Why? Because that freedom of religion is only a outside policy the Roman Catholic Church speaks of, but when the shit hits the fan, how are they gonna say that? When it really comes to the point, when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, the Roman Catholic Church is absolutely opposed of religious freedom. And everything that they publish within their own ranks confirms this, like Article 15 in the Syllabus of Errors, what we read here. Of course, now you say, but yeah, Jörg, the Constitution was not written by Catholics. No? Read Rulers of Evil again. Read The Ark and the Dove again from J. Moss Ives, and you will get a completely different understanding of who founded your nation and what are the reasons. Anybody who tells me that Roman Catholicism did not found the United States of America did not understand Revelation 13. Because it speaks of the United States of America as the second beast. Okay? The second beast is a mirror of the first beast. The United States of America are a mirror of the Vatican. It started out lamb-like when it was in the colonies, and then it started speaking as a dragon, more and more and more and more. And I am not speaking about the inhabitants of the country, people. I'm not speaking about John Doe on the street. I'm speaking about the hierarchy. I'm speaking about the government. Always. And here you have proof. Anathema on the one who says every man is free to embrace or profess the religion his judgment considers to be right. It is madness to think that the freedom of conscience and worship are mere rights to every man. Encyclical letter of Quanta Cura. This is the same, in other words. The freedom of conscience and worship. Another word for that is the freedom of religion, right? It is madness to think that the freedom of religion are mere rights to every man. Encyclical Quanta Cura. So whenever you are quote-unquote given these rights, it's only that the Roman Catholic Church can follow the policy of that moment. You know, the Roman Catholic Church has to behave differently when it is in the minority. It has to act differently when it is equal with other religions in the country. But it will come out and be as a lion and devouring everything else when it is in the majority. As long as the Roman Catholic Church is in the minority, as it was in the founding of the United States, they only had 2% Catholics. 2%. Today, you have about, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 35% Catholics. And then you have to count all the evangelibelly evangelicals, yeah, who uh, who are through futurism and wrong Bible teaching and seminaries infiltrated by the Jesuits made Roman Catholic too. Liberals, but Catholics in their way of thinking. When you count all these, you have a majority of at least 60 to 70% in the United States of America of that quote-unquote religion. It is madness to think that the freedom of conscience and worship are mere rights to every man. Exactly, in other words, what according to Tom Friess, Cardinal Newman or Bishop Newman or whatever that guy was, he was a high Catholic representative on EWTN, on that eternal network television. What he said there, that no man has the right to choose his own religion, according to Roman Catholic canon law. Judging by the way it treats quote-unquote heretics, it is no wonder that the Vatican systematically condemns all attempts to come to terms between Christian states and those who are officially atheistic. Non est pax impillis, no peace for the wicked. And Jesuit Father Cavalli, like many others before him, proclaims that this intransigence is the Roman Church's most imperative law. As a counterpart to this explosion of fury on the Cardinal's part, we will quote another article which appeared in the same number of Le Monde on the 9th of January 1960. Interesting month, huh? We have had the 6th, the 7th, and now we have the 9th of January. Quote, humanity is approaching a situation where mutual annihilation becomes a possibility. Speaking about the quote-unquote dangers of the Cold War and the nuclear race. In the world today, there is no other event which can be compared in importance to this. We must then strive incessantly for a just peace. Unquote. So said President Eisenhower yesterday, Thursday, before the United States Congress, at the same time as Cardinal Ottaviani in Rome condemned the coexistence as partaking of the crime of Cain. The contrast between two manners of thought cannot be more striking. The human and the theocratic, nor more obvious the mortal danger hovering over the world because of that nucleus of blind fanaticism we call the Vatican. Its sacred egoism is such that circumstances and the urgent necessity for an international accord in order to avoid the almost total extermination threatening humanity do not matter. The Holy Office's secretary, this supreme tribunal, speaking of the Inquisition, whose past is too well known, does not take into account such negligible contingencies. Do the Russians go to Mass? This is the important thing, and if President Eisenhower does not understand it, it is because he, quote, seems to have grown stupid with terror, unquote, to use the terms of the fiery Porporato. The delirious frenzy of Cardinal Ottaviani's speech makes us smile at the same time as it shocks us. And many think that this firebrand will find it difficult to persuade Christians that the atomic bomb must be accepted gracefully. But we must be on our guard. Behind this spokesman of the Holy See, there is all the pontifical organization, and especially this secret army of Jesuits not made up of ordinary soldiers. All the members of that famous company work within the corridors of power, and their action, without making a great deal of noise, can be singularly effective, that is to say, evil. A rumor was spread that Cardinal Ottaviani's brutal stand was not the exact reflection of the Holy See's thought, but only that of one of the so-called integrists' claim. The Catholic press in France at any rate tried to attenuate the import of that violent speech, and La Croix in particular only printed a short extract from which all violence had been omitted. Wise opportunism indeed, but it could not deceive anyone. It is just impossible that such a sharp criticism of an exceptional political importance could have been uttered from the pulpit of Sainte-Marie-Majeure by the Holy Office's secretary without the approval of that congregation's chief, of its prefect, the sovereign pontiff himself. And as far as we know, he never disowned his eloquent subordinate. Antichrist Pope John the 23rd could not throw that bomb himself, but by making one of the most important of the curious dignitaries take his place, he wanted to make his connivance obvious to everyone. Moreover, and by a strange coincidence, a more modest explosion took place at the same time in the form of an article in the Osservatore Romano, condemning once again socialism, even non-Marxist, as quote-unquote opposed to Christian truth. However, those who practice this political mistake are not excommunicated ipso facto like the communists. They still have the hope of escaping hell, but the threat of purgatory remains. When you believe in these childish stories, of course. By showing its opposition to any attempt at bringing together East and West so vehemently, was the Vatican expecting some positive results? Was it really hoping to intimidate the statesmen who purpose these politics of peace? Or was it at least hoping to provoke a move contrary to the détente amongst the faithful? Well, I think I have to go into a little comment here. You all heard of the Hegelian dialectic, right? Let's see if I have a picture of that. The Hegelian dialectic speaks of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Okay, let's see if we can get a picture. I don't know. I hope that the solution is the resolution is good enough that you can see this. Yeah, Hegel's dialectic. Hegel was a German philosopher. So many wrong people came out of Germany, it's incredible, but also good people like Martin Luther. Hegel's dialectic. You have a thesis, you have the antithesis, and you have the synthesis, which is then becomes the new thesis. Now, why am I speaking about this? Well, let's see, what does this text here say? Is that interesting to read? It's about the Hegel's dialectic. It reads, Hegel's ideas are very simple. You have an objective or something you want to accomplish. The way to achieve it is to create trouble bad enough so that people will start looking for a solution. When the troubles get bad enough, then you start offering the solution that you had in mind all along. Thus, you get what you want, and the people have no idea that was what you wanted in the first place. The people are the pawns moving exactly the way planned by the mastermind. Watch it work. Well, where am I leading with this? You remember the quote-unquote Cold War, post-World War II time. You had two world powers. You had the United States on the one hand, and you had the USSR on the other hand. Thesis and antithesis. Freedom, capitalistic freedom, and communistic prism. Thesis and antithesis. As you know by now, and I hope you understand, you really embrace that in your understanding, the Roman Catholic Church, through the Jesuit order, always plays both sides. They control the thesis, they control the antithesis, and of course they are managing the synthesis, which then becomes the new thesis. Now, What is that in the light of Second World War? What does that have to do with the secret history of the Jesuits and the part in the book that we are reading right now, Jörg? Maybe you ask yourself this, maybe you already get it. I'm gonna answer this question I just posed here anyway, myself. America, capitalistic freedom on the one hand, and Soviet Russia, communistic prison on the other hand, thesis and antithesis. And in the end of the 1980s, with the Holy Alliance between Pope John Paul II and the American traitor President Ronald Reagan, you had the Holy Alliance to bring down Soviet Russia, or the Soviet Union, Communist Soviet Union. And they did that. In 1989, the German wall fell in Berlin, all the borders got open, and communism fell in the next few years. So you only had one world power over. So it seems that the thesis, America, had won over the antithesis, communism. It seems that way. Well, the problem is that nobody understands that thesis and antithesis both have to go away to form the new synthesis. We are now in the post-communistic time, and we are in the time where now the thesis has to go. The thesis here, this is United States of America, this is our Western lifestyle, this is our Western Christianity, and this is even our real Christianity, Bible Christianity. And here you have everything that is opposed to this. In the antithesis, you had communism, which is atheism. Now this one is quote-unquote gone. Now this one has to go, and then you merge these two, and then you get the synthesis. You get your new one, and that is your new world order. Do you get it? It's all about Hegelian dialectic. The one has to go, then the other one can go, and from two things vanished you produce one new. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Explaining the New World Order has never been easier than that, at least in my mind. And what we are reading right here in the secret history of the Jesuits is exactly that. By showing its opposition to any attempt at bringing together East and West so vehemently, was the Vatican expecting some positive results? Was it really hoping to intimidate the statesmen who pursue these politics of peace? Or was it at least hoping to provoke a move contrary to the detente amongst the faithful? By showing its opposition to any attempt to bringing together East and West. Bringing together communism and capitalism. And out of that emerges the new synthesis, the new world order. As unreasonable as such a hope may seem, the author continues, it may well have haunted these clerical minds. Their peculiar views are bound to produce such illusions. What's more, these soothsayers, they could not have forgotten a certain illusion used for so long to deceive those who trusted them, and which they apparently shared. We are referring to Russia's conversion, apparently announced at Fatima by the Holy Virgin in person in 1917, to Lucia the shepherdess, who eventually embraced holy orders and testified of it somewhat late in 1942 in the memoirs she wrote at her superior's request. This cock and bull story may make us smile, but the fact remains that the Vatican, under Antichrist Pius XII's pontificate, propagated it throughout the world with any amount of speeches, sermons, solemn declarations, a torrent of books and pamphlets, and the peregrinations of the statue of that new and very political Notre Dame across every continent, where even the animals, so we were told, came to pay homage. This noisy propaganda is still clearly remembered by the faithful, as are the wild affirmations, such as this one printed on the 1st of November 1952 by Lacroix. Quote, Fatima has become a crossroads. The fate of the nations can be decided better there than round tables. Unquote. Its thoroughfares cannot find refuge in the ambiguity anymore. The alternative is perfectly clear: détente or Cold War. The Vatican chooses war and does not hide the fact. This choice should not surprise anyone, if past experience, even in the recent past, has been a lesson to us. And if it surprised some, we believe that it is because of its unceremonious proclamation or without the useful camouflage. We begin to understand the violence when we consider the importance of the stake to the Roman Pontiff. We would misjudge the Vatican by thinking it capable of renouncing a hope as old as the Eastern Schism itself, the one of bringing back Orthodox believers under the obedience throughout a military success. Hitler's rise was due to this obstinate hope, but the final defeat of his crusade still did not open the eyes of the Roman Curia to the folly of such an ambition. There is another, and even more pressing desire: to liberate in Poland, Hungary and Czechoslovakia this famous Church of Silence, which has only become such because of the unexpected turn of events. For the Holy See, in the Nazi crusade, qui trop embarrasse mal étreint, grasp all, lose all, a wise proverb which has never inspired fanatics. To resume its march towards the east, its clerical Drang nach Osten, urge to the east, and first retrieve the lost strongholds, the Vatican still relies upon the Germanic secular arm, its main European champion in need of new strength and vigor. At the head of federal Germany, western section of the Great Reich, it had placed a trusty man, Chancellor Konrad Adenauer, the Pope's secret chamberlain, and the politics he pursued for more than 15 years clearly display the Holy See stamp. Exhibiting at first great caution and an opportune liberal state of mind, the man his fellow countrymen nicknamed Der alte Fuchs, means the old fox, worked at rearming his country. Of course, the moral rearmament of the population and of the German youth in particular was an imperative supplement to the first. Now, the author doesn't speak about this here, but I have to tell you, of course. Konrad Adenauer was a member of the CDU, the party which Merkel is Chancellor of since 2005. The CDU has its roots in the Zentrum Party, the Center Party. And you all remember Ludwig Kaas and the Center Party and how it brought Hitler into power. So right after Hitler went down, you have the successor party of that, and doing the same politics all over again, but with another person on the top. Less fanatic than Hitler, but still the same policy. And it took some more time for the Jesuits to infiltrate all the other German political parties after Second World War. And when that was achieved, also the socialists could rule. At the end of the 1960s, Willy Brandt came to power as the first socialist chancellor of Germany, and after him Schmidt, and then the clock again went to the right with Kohl, and then it went to the left with Schröder, and then it went to the right with Merkel, and there where it is still today, well, No, because today we have the quote-unquote great coalition between the CDU right and the SPD socialists on the left. But the people who were put in power in Germany right after the Second World War came from the CDU, which stands for the Christian Democratic Union, which is the successor party of the Center Party, which helped Hitler into power. We should always remember that. We still have a few minutes to go, so I'm gonna continue reading here. That is why important posts in the ministries and administrations of Western Germany are held by many individuals with notorious Hitlerian pasts. The list is long, and captains of industries such as von Krupp and Flick, who had not long since been condemned as war criminals, direct again their gigantic works, which were restored to them. The end justifies the means, and this end is clear enough. To forge Siegfried's new sword, the arm necessary for revenge, a revenge which would be shared by the Vatican. It is then with a perfect synchronism that the Chancellor Chamberlain, during an interview given to a Dutch periodical, echoed the fulminating speech Cardinal Ottaviani had just expressed. Quote, "The peaceful coexistence of nations whose views are totally opposite is just an illusion which, alas, still finds too many supporters." Unquote. So this must come from Adenauer then, I guess. Elsevier's Weekblad, quoted by Combat, 11th of January 1960. Yeah. You know, what I think is very important that we understand that the author writes here that Adenauer, the first Chancellor of the Western German Republic after World War II, was a secret Chamberlain to the Pope. Do you also remember who was another secret Chamberlain to the Pope? Franz von Papen, the power behind Adolf Hitler before and during the Nazi reign. Also a secret Chamberlain to the Pope. Now, anybody who does not see this pattern is anybody that I cannot help with this reading, is anybody that cannot be helped by any reading of anything. When you don't see this, then you are just having eyes to see, but you don't see, having ears to hear, but you don't hear. Peaceful coexistence of nations whose views are totally opposite is just an illusion which, alas, still finds too many supporters. That is a very interesting quote to stop this reading here today. And maybe we go on with this next time and go a little bit into more study of this quote. The peaceful coexistence of nations whose views are totally opposite is just an illusion. So how can Soviet Russia, or the Soviet Union, the communistic Soviet Union, peacefully coexist with United States or Western capitalism? It couldn't. It is an illusion. And that's why the Jesuits use the Hegelian dialectic wherever they go and wherever they please. That's what they always done, and that's what they're going to do in the future too. Okay? And we really have to understand that when we understand the way the Jesuits work, they have no chance of deceiving us. When next to that we are firm in the Word of God, in the 1611 authorized King James Version of the Bible, they have even less chance to deceive us. And we can look at this whole theater that is playing all throughout the world with a smile on our face and saying, do whatever you want to do, play whatever you want to play, entertain whoever you want to entertain, but you are not deceiving me, because I stand on the rock. And in the end, the truth will prevail. Why? Not because I, Jörg, said so, but because God said so. Read the Bible. Who will win in the end? It is not Satan. It is not the Antichrist. It is not the worldly, the temporal, the civil power. It is the spiritual righteousness of our Creator God, Jesus Christ, that will overwin everything. Thanks for watching, listening, commenting, and until next time, Jörg from Juggler66 signing off. God bless you. Bye bye.
Especially I work in dealing with the infiltration of churches and religious institutions as well as government. That cover a tremendous number of institutions.
And the purpose of that infiltration was what for?
Well, the purpose is what the Roman Catholic system has all the time as her own purpose, is to infiltrate, to penetrate all the areas of life where the Roman Catholic can have control and access for the coming world government.
Simply put, this country and this world benefit from your commitment to Jesuit principles, to being men.
As a graduate of another great Jesuit institution, Xavier University, I have great affection for the value and purpose of a Jesuit education.
What that means is, in preparation for that world government, the Roman Catholic institution, especially since the establishment of the Jesuit order in 1541, throughout all these 500 years, they've been in preparation and through infiltration and penetration of every level of society in order to take over the world politically and religiously.
What a beautiful day the Lord has made. Holy Father, on behalf of Michelle and myself, welcome to the White House.
There are two doctrines that define very well these dangerous goals of the Roman Catholic institution. Two doctrines define this very well. One is called the doctrine of the apostolic succession, and that is dealing with the papacy. And the other is the doctrine, the temporal power, and that is dealing with world government. Of course, both, because you can see that even the Pope and his own individual office, he meet those requirements. He is not only the head of his church, as he called himself, John Paul II, the present Pope. He said he is the pastor of his church. He is not only that, but he is the head of his state.
It is a sign, perhaps, of how far we have come in this country that today's news of formal recognition between the governments of the United States and the Vatican did not create a furor. Once upon a time, it would have. Once upon a time, and not all that long ago, it did.
From the time of President Washington, there was the first president to be utilized by the Jesuits. If you were not aware of that, President Washington already was initiated by the Jesuits to bring about the first communication with the Vatican ever known in this country. From there on, President Reagan, throughout all this time, President Reagan has come to fulfill the greatest moment in the history of this conspiracy.